Here.
Rebecca Ward.
Here.
Ryan Miller.
Here.
Bill Crouch.
Here.
Alex Crawford here.
Oh, that's right. I was just throwing out to this guy. Sit there. He was going after me, one of the
Has the meeting been duly noticed?
Yes, proper notice.
Okay, can I have a motion to approve the agenda?
Motion to approve the agenda?
I second. Any questions? Question is to approve the agenda. All those in favor say aye.
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 Okay. Now we come to the minutes. Can I have a motion on the minutes?
Motion to approve the minutes?
Second. Okay. It's motioned and seconded to approve the minutes. I have some issues with the minutes. At 4 o'clock, the minutes were not posted on the website, but there seems to be some errors in the minutes. Who produced the minutes, please?
Why do you ask?
I'm just asking. You produced the minutes?
I okayed the minutes.
Okay, so who wrote the minutes?
Why do you ask?
I'm asking because of the incorrectness of the minutes.
Could we discuss what's incorrect?
Yes, I presume Alex wrote the minutes?
Could we discuss what's incorrect?
I believe it's in order to ask who wrote the minutes. Is it a secret?
It's not a secret. I'm asking what it is you think is incorrect.
The minutes are incorrect. The minutes incorrect regarding the report by Keith Johnson. After the approval of the minutes, Keith Johnson spoke. This has got nothing to do with the erosion committee, and much of what was said in the section that reports what Keith Johnson said was incorrect. In fact, it was a lot more than he actually said. My recollection, and I'm not sure who was here that night, my recollection is that Keith Johnson described he wanted easement, he wanted access to 2 parcels of property for the purpose of, and it certainly was assumed, to access property owned by him adjacent to it.
I'm afraid I'm going to have to review the tape.
Okay, does anybody else have an issue with the minutes?
I have, Mr. President.
Because Ryan's on the phone, could you come and speak to the microphone? I'm sorry, I'm going to ask everybody to do that tonight.
What's that noise?
Ryan, we can hear you breathing.
All right, then.
Okay, don't breathe, Ryan. Sorry.
The only problem I found was that Mr. Tom Downing gave a list of items and a report. None of that is in the minutes, up under Grounds and Oversight Committee. None of the information he gave as a part of a committee was put in the minutes, and I think it should have been. It was recorded, so he was on the committee, and that should have been everything he said. It should have been recorded into the minutes, and it wasn't. And I don't think that's proper. You know, did you do them, Mr. President?
I did not do the minutes.
They're your minutes. You're responsible for what goes in them, right?
The secretary is responsible for
Well,
what goes in the minutes.
they're not correct.
Okay, that's actually my recollection too. The Grounds Oversight Committee, the report is very short as to what was actually said. I did ask that the tape or digital, whatever it is, be preserved. Is there any other issue in the minutes?
I have an issue with the minutes. From my recollection, Mr. Johnson, and I asked him this, I said, what you're asking is that there's a parcel that's owned by Holley by the Sea that you want access or easement to go and remove non-indigenous plants on a property that your client or you want to do something with? And he said yes. At no time did he ever mention any lot numbers or block numbers or that I can recollect. And in the minutes it says, and I quote from the minutes, it says, for some reason the former owner of the property transferred ownership of the two off-site mitigation properties to Holley by the Sea. He never said that.
Yeah, none of this section was actually what happened. This is completely made up. We had no information in the board books prior to the meeting about this. Mr. Johnson was speaking immediately after the minutes were approved, and what he said was very simple. None of this detail was in the actual meeting. And this is a subject of something down the road, so I request that the minutes be corrected and also put out in a more timely manner, because I say today at 4 o'clock the minutes were not on the website.
Can I ask a question? If I'm to understand.
I'm sorry, yes. I'm just indicating to move, so we move the next one. Go ahead, please.
Okay. Bill, I think you were saying that you did not feel that the minutes represented what Keith Johnson said correctly?
Correctly, yes.
Okay, and then the second one, I believe, was from Mr. Dean, who said that he did not believe that the minutes represented correctly what Tom Downing said.
Yes.
Okay, is there anything else that I need to review on the tape?
Unless anybody else, I'm sorry, Mr. Stevens, you
Go
have
ahead,
an
go
issue with this?
Yeah, I just wanted to talk about that a little bit here on that.
Okay.
I have a big concern on how Mr. Johnson was reported, come up here and reported as part of the manager's report. When you have something of such significance to the board of directors and to Holley by the Sea, that should have been put on the agenda under new business, and it should have been discussed and voted on it under old business. And hopefully the board understands this. The Greenbelt area in Holley by the Sea, and this is just based from county reports, is probably worth $20 million. So when you talk about giving people approval to come across our properties and do stuff, folks, you're talking about money. Thank you.
Okay, so basically we're going to postpone approving the meetings, the minutes until the secretary has a chance to review the tape. Okay. We're moving on now to the GM report.
In addition to your project report that is in the board book, I just have two other little items. Also included in your board material is some information regarding the Roads Inc. DEP permit. There was some question as to whether or not the vendor pulled proper DEP permitting last year for the erosion work. So I supplied that information for the board to review. That's not an action item. And then I just have one expenditure request from the reserves for additional equipment, actually replacement equipment in the gym. We have a weightlifting bench that requires replacement at this point, and we set aside $15,000 each year to replace equipment as it becomes necessary in the gym. We recently did an elliptical. Now we need to do a weight bench. The cost of the super flat incline bench would be $655. And then we're also asking for funding to sandblast and powder coat a rack rather than replacing it. Replacement cost would be $1,400. Maintenance feels that the project can be done with sandblasting and repainting at $500. So I would ask for $1,375 from the reserve account for gym equipment to be expensed.
I don't have this report. Does anybody have that in their board book? I don't have anything.
I don't have it in your board book. I am asking for the funding under my manager's report.
I would like to get the information before we vote, so that we're clear what we're doing. I mean,
I think she's already given it to us.
that's what you just
What-
said.
What then?
Right, but in writing.
In writing?
Yeah, I would like to see it in the form of writing, because I'm not sure why we don't have a report. We usually have a written report.
Was this something new that came about?
Yes, and it's a minor expense, but I can submit samples of what the equipment looks like for the board to review, and then we can revisit the topic.
Yeah. Yeah, that sounds good.
Okay.
That's all I have.
Okay, thank you. Okay, the secretary, Madam Secretary?
Okay, operation cash available, 10/31 was $637,855. Undesignated funds available, $617,620. Reserve, was $705,090, and I always take out of that, money for capital improvement, which we haven't touched, which is $272,686. Reserve cash available for projects that, CDs that become available May 15th, $255,553. That gives us on hand for available reserve money is $176,851. Okay, that's the treasurer's report, but as you know, I've been also including additional information, mainly because we've been using money from the reserve quite a bit the past couple of months. So if I start with that $176,851, we paid Trident Roof, $53,636. That brought the reserve, usable reserve, down to $123,215. We have some items in the pipeline coming up. That'd be another $63,007. So available right now in reserve money is $60,208.
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
This includes all of the payments, including the 10% holdback?
You know what, I didn't bring my detailed notes with me.
That minus
I'm thinking
reserve?
that is the holdback. The 53, the
63.
53, I believe was the holdback. But I have to look, I didn't, unfortunately I didn't bring it with me. I
Okay,
didn't bring it with me.
okay. I have one more question,
Sure.
and I don't mind waiting until next time, or you can
Sure.
just let me know online. I'm looking at the financial statements,
Mhm.
and I noticed that in August, the health, we had salaries of 60,000 and healthcare of 4,700. And then we had salaries went down in September, which you would expect, 45,000, and healthcare 2,600. But now, this month, we have the same salaries, but we have 6,900 healthcare. And
Okay.
I'm just wondering why
6,900.
6,900, yeah, 6,900, 69, yeah. But it's the same payroll.
Okay. All right.
I mean, there's probably a good reason for that, but as I say, you
All
can
right.
just send me that information online.
Okey-dokey.
Thank you. Madam Secretary has no
No.
report. And the internal vice president, had meant to bring a form, but he was not able to, so he has no report. And, now we come to the external vice president.
In the last meeting, I gave a little talk on the external vice president, and it was sort of, like I said, that nobody really gave me any kind of direction as to exactly what my job description was about.
Right.
So one of our members, excuse me, Ken, you hear me okay?
He asked for the mic.
Huh?
The man back there asked for the mic.
Oh, sorry. Can you hear me better now?
Yes.
Yes, just to start over, the last meeting I mentioned that I hadn't seen any rules from the general manager or the board or anybody exactly what the goals and purposes of the external vice president were. And one of our members went back through the minutes and sent me a copy of exactly what the vice president, external vice president's duties are. And it was pretty much what I thought it was. I didn't bring it with me, but it's a matter of public record. It was in 1999 when the board established the external vice president position. And it, according to that, it was established because it felt like that a single vice president had way too much to do with both internal and external, so they established an external vice president position. And in that vice president, it's listed about 10 different items, and some of those items we're dealing with Santa Rosa County, we're dealing with the Chamber of Commerce, we're dealing with other organizations in our local area inside the county, that the external vice president would be in a position to express the views of our homeowners association to the powers that be, namely the commissioners and other activities in the counties. So I feel pretty comfortable that because the board established that as some guidelines, and I couldn't find where they had changed it or they got rid of the external vice president. So I assume that those goals and guidelines were still active when I was appointed external vice president. Keeping in line with dealing with external issues, also in my last meeting I mentioned that the task force, the long-range planning task force for our highways and our roads, had not implemented, but had suggested and put on the agendas that we have a road that's parallel to US 98 that starts at Edgewood Drive, and this is Manatee, and goes all the way eastward to the back of Walmart. At the time, there was no way because it hadn't been funded. Well, the information that I've received as of yesterday, that they're going to be having another meeting here really soon to actually discuss the funding of this road. So my question then was, I really don't know how to express the opinion of the homeowners association since I don't have any input other than my own input. And it's not for me to decide how everybody else feels. So that brings up an interesting issue on what is the best way to find the majority of the homeowners' opinions. And it falls down to the communication side of it. We have several choices. One is we can spend $5,000 and we can do a mailing, or $10,000, how much it costs. And we might get 10% back, we might get 15% back. There's other avenues that have opened up in the last year or two. The Facebook page, I think Sandy could tell me we have 600 and something likes or members or something like that. But it would seem like to me that we need to establish some way to reach out to the members of our association and try to establish some way that they can give their inputs. Especially on this matter, because I don't live on Manatee. If I did and I had kids, I certainly wouldn't want a main thoroughfare going through right in front of my house. Now, this is a long-range plan. This is not going to happen tomorrow. You know, we're talking 5, 10 years, probably more like 5, somewhere between the 5 and 10 year period. So, in lieu of that, it would seem like to me that we need to establish some way, and I know we've tried. And Sandy's done an excellent job with the Facebook page trying to reach out to our community, but a lot of people aren't on Facebook. I would think that the largest majority of our membership would have an email address of some type of some place. Now, whether they read it or not, who knows? But so it's very important that we know how everybody feels about this issue so that I can go to Rob Williamson, which I've already contacted in regards to this, and we can express our concerns to our commissioner. And he has the authority and the weight to affect any kind of position that he might have. So I know that we have a website. I can't, to be honest with you, if I didn't have a shortcut on my browser, I could never get to it. Okay? It's the FRS website. It's crammed full of all kinds of good information. There's all kinds of historical data up there. But if I'm a normal person, which I'm not, because I happen to be a computer background, so I'm thinking, well, if I have a hard time finding out the information, I assume that the largest majority of the people who live here would have an equal type of a problem. I do know that we do have an easy recognizable website, holleybythesea.org, which is basically in limbo at this time. It would seem like to me that that's an easy thing for everybody to remember. And putting information up on that, along with doing the Facebook, we're going to catch a larger majority of the people. Additionally, if we do the email blast, which is sometimes good or bad. I mean, I get hundreds of emails a day, and half of them are, more than half are junk mail, you know, somebody trying to get me to buy something. So I'm thinking that maybe we need to establish some kind of communication committee that can sit down and analyze what is the best way for us to communicate with our homeowners. So that's another one of the external vice president's report. That's not an actual job that falls along the lines of what's been listed to me. Now, a couple other activities and functions that we're having in our local community. You see I'm wearing a green t-shirt. I'm actively involved in the Navarre the Chamber Foundation, along with Sandy. And the Chamber Foundation does a lot of worthwhile things in our community. It's centered right around our community. And one of the things that we use to raise funds for the various things that we do is to do several of the 5Ks and the fun runs, and that's why I'm wearing a shirt. This Saturday, we are having a Navarre fun run, or the Jingle Bell Run, and this supports a good cause. Moving on Thursday, November 20th, the Santa Rosa County Engineer, Chris Phillips, and other county personnel, along with Ken Walker of the Navarre Water Board, and a highly respected engineering company from Navarre, along with the entire erosion committee and 2 board members, Alex Crawford and myself, had a meeting at the south end of the Holley by the Sea property. Now, one of the reasons we did this is because last meeting we had, I told you that as the external vice president, that I would get a handle on this, and I would find out, and I would report to you what my findings were. This is my findings from that meeting. Now, there's been a lot of emails, a lot of phone calls. There's been a lot of to-do with the erosion that was done by Browns Incorporated and was recommended by our erosion committee, which is made up of an engineer who are all members of our association, and in my opinion, are just trying to move us forward. This is my take on the meeting that I had with Chris Phillips with the county. Chris was explaining his position on what had taken place. Chris Phillips, the Santa Rosa County engineer, upon receiving numerous calls from Alex Fambry, the general manager of Holley by the Sea, investigated the property and the work in question on or about November 14th, in which he followed up with an email to all the concerned parties about his findings. The email stated that he was unaware of the extra work done on the South Sediment Basins. Upon viewing this work, he had real concerns because it did not match the engineering drawings submitted by the original developer. Additionally, he stated that he had no certified set of engineering plans and no permits were issued for the work that Road Inc. had done. Chris, on his visit on November 20th, was meeting with at least 4 other engineers on our site He again stated that the size of the sediment basin did not match the size of the sediment basin on the original developer's engineered plans. He further stated that the only permitting he had for anything for Holley by the Sea was dating back to the original developer's engineering plans. Chris, at this point, told us that what he really needed from us was an engineered study and drawings for the entire area in question. He would like the whole of our property to be included in the study, but he is only requiring the areas in question. Chris stated that he needed the county updated with all the changes that have been made to this property over the last 20 years, so that when we want to make a change or a repair, he has the information readily available. And he also requested the engineering study to show the impact of a 100-year rain event on our current system. He further said for us to plant some grass, which I think has been started. What this means, in my opinion, to Holley by the Sea, is we finally get corrections on a previous erosion project done by Rodin, and an analysis of our current erosion prevention system. Number two, there are no fines from the county that are heading our way. I am not going to jail, or nor is any other member of this board for making that decision. We will have to pay out approximately $3,100 for an engineered study with certified engineer drawings. This will be Holley by the Sea's first set of engineered plans in 20+ years. We will also be allowed to finish additional projects scheduled: RV parking area, beach restoration, jogging trail, and replacing of a missing pavilion once funding becomes available, if they are shown on the certified engineering drawings, which is included in the price mentioned above. Now, there has been a lot of stuff going on about this. Basically, what it boils down to is we can put all this to bed. It doesn't matter who was right, who was wrong. We're going to have a better system now. Road Inc. Nobody could have designed a erosion system for a 500-year flood, which is what happened to us back in April. It's unfortunate that everything blew out. And I'm sure there was a finger pointing going back and forth between all this. The erosion committee came forth, brought us 3 bids to repair what we already had done, which was what took place. When Chris came out, his main concern was that we did not make the repairs, but that we expanded the system beyond what he had on his original drawings. Now, we had a set of as-built plans that he was reviewing from Road Inc. And I asked him 2 questions. I said, are there anywhere on those plans that state the depth of these sediment basins? And I said, in particular, the sediment basin that blew out on the south end of the county. He said, according to what he had said, or what he had seen, they were 3 to 4 feet. Well, obviously, that sediment basin right next to the playground is a lot more than 3 or 4 feet. And I told him that that was not something that we had done in the last couple of months when we had repaired the system. He said, well, somebody did. And it was not on the engineered plans that we had in Road Inc. There was no depth there. The depth was 3 to 4 feet. So, to make a long story short, we can go back and forth, we can argue this point, we can point fingers, we can point blame. But we are so close to getting this solved and completed by just providing the county the information that they want. Not only do they want engineering drawings to show what our property looks like now, instead of in, I don't know, 88 or whenever, this center was built. And he wants an engineering study to determine whether what we have will survive a 100-year rain event. Now, to me, this seems like a very simple thing to do. Now, is it going to cost us $3,100 to solve what the county wants? Well, as far as the engineering study, the engineering plans, yes. But once the study comes back, there may be additional things that we have to do. We don't know yet. Now I do know, when I finish my report, you can ask a question. I do know that what part of what happened to the original erosion plans was to reinstall or reconnect a pipe that had ran down to the west side, to the east side of the beach. Now that plan, that pipe or that particular facility was not installed by Road Inc. And although it was listed on their plans to do, they dug it up. Now, why they did that, I don't know. It could have been an environmental thing or whatever it happened to be. But we put that pipe back out there. Now, in my opinion, and when I was talking to a couple of the engineers, we walked around and we looked at all this, I said, the biggest difference from what we had before the April flood event was that most of the storm water was being directed to dump into the sediment basin down there by the playground. All the water from everything that they had done was being dumped into that. The water from the west side of our property was being run down, and it was picked up by a drain, and it was taken out to the beach where there were rocks in there and stuff. What we have done is we have taken most of that water that was going into the sediment basin, which was water from most of the drains, and all the pipes just fed right into that thing. And we have directed it back to where it was when the developer turned in his engineering drawings. So now, what we have is this big sediment basin we have only gets surface water that is close by. So it's, what the engineer was telling me, he said, well, that's a good thing. Half of the engineers wanted us to fill in the entire property and say, hey, let's just let water drain out the way it is. That was their first comment. So after, I think the meeting lasted for close to 3 hours. And after that, he sent an email out, and then I had contacted, there was one of the engineering companies that were there, said, well, how about if I write you a proposal on solving your problems and helping you work with the county? Well, it turns out that this company works with our Navarre Water Board. Incidentally, the Navarre Water Board has been very, very good to our organization. They have helped us a lot throughout the years. They installed this sprinkler system on the east side of our properties that we get water from our ponds. Absolutely no charge to us. So they are working with us. They are trying to make sure that we have what we need to survive the 100-year flood and to meet the county's requirements. Now, the next thing that was coming up was the DEP, or Department of Environmental and Protection. From what I understand, and I do have some documentation in my board book, but Road Inc. did the proper permitting with the Department of Environmental Protection. We had a document that came in and says, yeah, you're all good to go. And this was grandfathered us into 2018. So in theory, once we put everything back like Road Inc. had, we had no issues with the Department of Environmental Protection. But we did make a little change to it. And when the Department of Environmental Protection came out and they worked with Road Inc., they saw all the damage and they saw all of this stuff. Now, they came back out and they had a meeting with the general manager. I think Sandy Kemp was there, and Alex Family was there, and I think there was Stevens was there, and I think that there was one other person was there. Oh, Alex Crawford. And they saw Browns Incorporated putting that pipe back in. Now, the biggest issue was, does that encroach on a wetlands area? Did we make a mistake and go too far? We found out later when the wetland sciences guy came out here last meeting, and he staked off the area that we weren't supposed to he staked off the area that we could do things to. So now we have, in my opinion, we have a better system than we had prior to the April storm event. All we have to do is just make sure that the county's happy with all this. The DEP, they're not coming after us because we are working within the bounds, also within a 2018 grandfathered in, where you have my external vice president's report.
Bill, I have a question. You had mentioned that during this visit on, I believe you said the 20th, when they spent about 3 hours here, that there was a civil engineer, I believe, and you had mentioned that it was only going to be $3,100. I don't recall a board vote on that.
The board has not voted on that. This is just the information as me as the external person trying to solve this issue. I have been given this proposal. We haven't accepted it. You know, it's probably a really good idea that we get a couple or two or three and look at them. But this is one that's by a reputable local engineering company that works with the Navarre Water Board on a consistent basis. This is what they do for the Navarre Water.
And he's actually, this engineer is being copied by Chris Phillips. So his name is Phillips too, no relation. So he is very well known to Chris Phillips and looked over the property with him.
I'm not questioning his credentials at all. I'm kind of questioning business going on without the full board being informed.
I sent a copy of this proposal to the president. It's up to her whether she wants to submit it. We had not fully worked out all the details of this particular proposal because we're trying to solve the issues that we have before us today before we try to move forward with any of these projects.
It's hard to have a discussion when you don't have all of the information.
We're not having a discussion. I'm giving you my report. If we want to have a discussion, I'm quite sure that our president will post any information that you need to make a honest and right decision.
And informed.
And informed, yes.
Thank you.
Dan Ramsey, 1931 Campbellwood Drive. Good report, and it's good news. But what I have an issue with, and I want the board to keep this in mind, if you have a committee and they're discussing money or changes or anything like that, it needs to be documented. That we had this problem over the years where things aren't documented, we don't know what the hell's going on, okay? And this committee should have been keeping minutes. And I'm hoping that your report that you get tonight, you will put on the website so that other members know what you're doing.
Absolutely. I agree with you 100%.
That is why, you know, members get upset because we're like in the dark on stuff, you know? And then if you wait until we have a meeting and, you know, we don't have the information in front of us, we don't know what it's gonna be. And as the president, you have the right to put anything on the agenda. However, if board members aren't comfortable with that, then you need to give them the information and then on the next meeting have a special meeting so that people know what's going on. That's all I want to say. I hope you put this in writing so that other members can see what we're doing and how we're spending money. Just like the $3,100, and then you're gonna have additional costs on top of that. That's what we need to know.
Right.
And when that pipe was changed, okay, and you guys asked for additional money, but there's no documentation on this stuff. So that's what I'm saying, just document it so that we have.
I think it was documented in the minutes.
Yeah, it was voted.
Yeah.
But Dan, I agree with you 100%. Every committee should operate in the same fashion.
There's no problem in gathering a couple more quotes. I feel we should move as quickly as possible since the next meeting is in January. Maybe we go ahead and get the quotes and have a special meeting for this because I really don't want to wait till January to get started with this.
Incidentally, I just remembered when I first read through the proposal, not only is he gonna do the engineering study about the stormwater runoff for the area in question, he's gonna do it for the whole property, which is really what the county wants. They want documentation of where we're at now. So that if we call up there and say, hey, listen, we're fixing to do this, he can go look at his plans and say, yeah, fine. So it's been going on for years and years and years and years and years and years and years. And I'm not gonna point fingers at anybody except I myself take responsibility for getting us in this damn mess. Because I came in here trying to do what I thought was right and just for this place. It had been sitting around and nobody was picking up, pulling their pants up and sucking it up and coming, all right, now let's get something done. And in my haste to get something done, I might have overstepped my authority and recommending this pipe be put back out there. Because it was there before, and if you really want to know the truth, it survived Hurricane Ivan. It also survived a 100-year rain event right after the next year after Hurricane Ivan. Because I was here for that. We had the same flooding. I had the same flooding in my backyard. I live on Valley, Hidden Creek, once behind me. That water came up 20 feet in my backyard. It did the same thing with this last rain, except it came a little farther. So this last event, also from what I understand, was not a 100-year event. It was a 500-year event. And all the county is asking us to do is to make sure that we can be covered for a 100-year event. Which, what we had with Road 8 might have possibly have been able to survive that. I don't know.
Go ahead.
You need a rest?
Man, you give me a microphone and
I know you. I figure I better give you a rest. The meeting that took place in the back, from being chairperson of the erosion committee that Mr. Crouch was talking about, I called for that meeting with Chris Phillips on behalf of Holley by the Sea, because we weren't really sure what they were asking for and this and that, because we didn't know it until just the other day. We had approval from the DEP twice, not once, but twice. The manager had some time back got approval from the DEP, but we didn't get any of that information, so we went ahead, and that was the letter I presented to the board that I got from the DEP to give us approval again. So we had 2 approvals there, so we're pretty happy with that. And after we done some extensive research back there, we took a copy, I showed them the copy of the letter that we had received from the DEP with permission to do exactly what we told them we were doing. But Mr. Crouch pointed out where some of the problems came in, and I mean, it's pretty obvious after you look at the county, what their concerns were, is that #1 settlement basin, we call it, down by the playground. Which I explained to them, well, our committee, our contractor, we didn't do anything wrong. We repaired exactly what we told you. We put the pipe back into the bay, not in the wetland area, where we told you. So he pulls out a photo that was about 20 years old, and it showed that settlement basin. And he says, look how much bigger it is. I said, well, I'm aware of that. I've been living here for 20 years. I know that that basin never did have an outlet. It was only to catch surface water. Well, who did this and who did that? I said, well, the only thing I can tell you is what our committee done. And if you want to see that we didn't make it bigger, today you can go back and look, the sod that the previous folks, I'm not going to get into names, the previous folks done, the sod is still there. That's never been watered since it was put down. So that means that nobody, Mr. Brown didn't do anything about making it bigger in that area, because if we had the site, wouldn't still be laying on the south side of the thing. So he said, well, make a long story short, what we need to do is Holley by the Sea needs to get in compliance that, and I know we keep hearing this, that the previous person had engineering plans at the county. No, no, no. If somebody can produce one at this time, and I know some people has been saying, we got one stamped off. That'd save us $3,100 or more.
You got that in there? He's got 2 sets.
It's
Mr.
a
Downey
good-
has the.
Yeah, we got 2 or 3 sets of as-bills. No names, no stamps. And by the way, I'll just give you a little more information so people will understand it. I can't think of their name. What's your Hamilton, or who was it? Hammond. They used the guys who was an engineer on the board, who was the president of the board. They duplicated his plans in 206. And that's how Hammond came up with their plans. And because I thought, from looking at it, this is a guy that worked with the county that did the original design back there. So this is sort of getting funny. So Tom and I kept looking at it, and Tom blew up the seal on Mr. Rogers' plans. And guess what the date is? If any of you board members would like to look, he'll come up and show you. 206. Neil Rogers. So, make a long story short, folks, we need to work together. There's 24 emails going about out here. He said, she said. Not truthful. We need to work together. If these people would just convert that energy into positive energy, and everybody quit calling each other names. I'm elated that this gentleman that the board hired to do the work, he saved this association $150,000. Now to me, that's a good Christmas present. Thank you.
Was that the erosion committee's report, or? No? That was, okay. I just want to say something about the erosion committee, all 3 of them. Wayne Miracle is not here, but these guys spent 6 or 7 hours a day, down on the back 40, watching Brown, watching the job. And I think it is really pretty fantastic that in a community you've got members that are prepared to give that time. I also went to the meeting where there were accusations that we were impinging on wetlands. Let me use Sandy, and there's no, I just pick Sandy as, because I know you've got a business here. If I call the IRS and say Sandy Kemp is...
great. Please.
Exactly. That's my point. You know, saying that she's shuffling money offshore. Are they going to come and investigate her? Yes, sir, they are. Does it have to be true what I say? No, it doesn't. And I would just remind members, we ask to just calm down a little bit. Let's separate the fact from fiction in this. And Bill Crouch has given a very good report. Nobody's going to jail. So let us just
But that's
move
what I'm
forward.
saying, your communication as a board, you did not follow through to the membership. You did not post anything on the website about what the hell was going on at all. And as a committee,
That was because we didn't know anything. And unfortunately, the
they're supposed to keep minutes.
Okay, unfortunately,
Yes.
websites were full of hearsay, rumor, and whatever. And I asked the board, until we know something, let's not say anything. If we don't know anything, it's just conjecture. And that was my call, to wait until we had facts, rather than going out there and imagining we were gonna have a $2.5 million fine, and imagining we were gonna go to jail, and imagining this and that. You know, I would rather know where we were before we speak, rather than just shoot from the hip and speak.
Well, you know, the issue that we have is members, is
Thank you.
you did not post it.
Okay, thank you.
Moving forward, I think that you'll find that
Yes, absolutely.
that's not gonna be the case anymore. Shame on you, Erosion Committee, for not having minutes.
Okay.
I'm
I'm
gonna
gonna,
haven't been appointed yet either, so I might wanna do that.
order please, this is not a discussion amongst yourselves. Okay, we're gonna come to the president's report now. Yes, there is, in the officer's report. Okay, if you look at this map, and this is why we made such a big issue about the easement. The request for the easement was presented last meeting without any documentation. For those of us that were here, the impression was that the request was to go through our property to another property. That was the impression that was given. Certainly not the detail that was in the minutes. That didn't exist. And as I say, we had no board information. The little orange horizontal rectangle and the one next to the purple on, oh, very good, thank you, Jen. On Edgewood and Indian and Glassport, just below it. Okay, these are the two pieces of property that they requested the easement on. In the year 2000, Holley by the Sea engaged an attorney, John Borderline. Yeah, who was very involved in the mitigation. We have a lot of greenbelt in Holley by the Sea, and this is worth millions of dollars. What we were supposed to vote on, I feel, was incorrectly presented. Mitigation credits, if a builder obtains mitigation credits, he can go and develop wetlands. When we visited the water board, I just want to give you an example. At the water board, Mr. Walker had purchased a piece of land, 10 acres. They developed 1 acre. When they wanted to go back and develop the 2nd acre, and this was their property, they had to buy 17 acres surrounding it, and they had to plant trees. When he wanted to develop the 3rd acre, he had to buy 50 acres. So these mitigation credits can be very expensive. So you wonder, if you'd like to go to the next slide. Okay, so here, who is Nalini Patel? Does Nalini Patel own property in Holley by the Sea? Nalini Patel is developing a piece of property on 98. Okay, nothing to do with these. They're not neighbor to these 2 parcels of property. Let's go on. Okay, Holley by the Sea is the owner. You go to the next one. Okay, now, when you look at this, 2012, 2013, no tax paid. No tax paid so far this year. Now, I'm not going to pretend for 1 minute that I really understand about the mitigation credits. The person who does is John Borderline. I called John Borderline and Borderline. Yeah. B-O-R-D-E-L-O-N. Okay. He's a very experienced attorney, and he knows so much about this. It's his specialty. For a couple of hours of his time, probably about $500, he would give us not just an impression, he would give us his impression on this. He told me as president not to sign the easement. He asked me what money we were gonna get for this. And I said nothing. And he said our best plan was to rescind the vote, which is on the agenda to do, until he gets a chance to look at it. And I am going to go ahead as president and engage John Borderline for a minimum look at this. As I say, it's about $500 because he knows so much about it. It's his specialty. To see what is gonna happen here. We're gonna rescind this, it's not been signed.
You still need to have the vote.
You have to vote on
You have to.
it.
You
It's
can't
on,
do that
it's
on
on the
your own.
agenda.
Yes, it's on the agenda to rescind the vote, yes, exactly.
And engage
Exactly.
the attorney.
Yeah,
Yes.
it's the $500. You have to have 2 other board members in order to approve you to spend $500.
My understanding was that, the last board, and I don't believe it's been rescinded, I'm just stating this as a matter of, record, that the, president of the last board was able to sign a $4,800 contract with no board approval,
I don't know
nothing.
about
Or
the
that was one individual did that, not the board.
You need a vote.
That's what I'm saying. We can certainly have a vote. We can certainly have a vote. Mr. Stevens?
I was under the impression that at the last meeting, I thought this guy says he owned property there, and he was asking you folks for a 5-year
Easement.
easement.
Yeah, this is why I'm very concerned with the minutes, because the minutes did not represent what was said at the meeting at all. And speaking to people after the meeting, it sounded like here is a guy who has a piece of property here, and our property is stopping him getting to it. That's exactly what it sounded like.
All I'm saying is, you can do that, that's fine, but you have to have a vote on the vote.
Okay.
You send it, then you make a vote.
But the fact that, you know, and then, again, it's incorrect in the minutes, we need to find out what's going on with this.
Right.
So he don't own no property, really?
That's correct.
He shouldn't have been in here.
I think we own the property, is that not correct?
No,
That's what I'm
he
saying.
meant
He said
right
he
next
wanted
to-
the right of way to get to his property.
Yeah, that's what he said.
So he don't own it.
So he wanted the right of way to come across our property to get into the greenland, the greenbelt area there of somebody else's property.
No, he wanted to get onto that orange piece, and he wanted to get onto this this vertical rectangle that's parallel to Edgewood. I think Jan is.
So he wanted to get
Not the
on,
purple one, the one that's on Edgewood.
well, I remember he stated that he wanted to come across our property to get onto somebody else's property.
Yeah, the only one to get.
I have the video, I have the tape, so you'll be able to see
Yeah.
what it is.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
So you need to make a motion.
Or you don't transcribe it?
Not there yet. Get back to the.
What he stated, I believe, was, that there were Florida invasive species on
Exactly,
the
yeah.
property, and he wanted to be able to remove those for no cost to Holley by the Sea.
Right, and you've gotta kind of wonder when somebody offers you a gift horse, is it really a gift horse?
Yes.
As I say, these
That's a good thing to think
mitigation
about.
credits are worth money. And
Like-
it's obviously not going to Holley by the Sea.
I'm kinda curious if the property taxes have not been paid on a property that we own.
Yeah,
How
why?
how many other properties have not had their property taxes paid up to date?
That's been going on for quite a while.
What?
You need to get with the general manager and the accountant about those issues.
Yeah. And actually, Mr. Bordlin, if I say it wrong, you just excuse it. Mentioned, you know, that he would wanna make sure of any other property that was like this. What often happens, and I know because my son participates in this, if you don't pay your taxes, you can have the property forfeited and sold off at the courthouse door for pennies on the dollar. And, you know, we don't want to be involved in anything that's suspect at all. So I think the best thing to do, I did not sign the easement, the best thing to do when we come to it would be to rescind the vote, let Ms. Borland investigate what's going on here. If it's above board, we should be at least getting some money from this. And if it's not, then we can stop right there.
Well, I carry a step.
Excuse me. Oh, I'm sorry. Here.
Rod Danner, 6661 Fairmont. The way the mitigation credits work is that in order to develop a property that's wetland, they had to set aside, when all this happened, they had to set aside mitigation property. And one of the requirements of that is they may require certain things. Sometimes they may require prescription fire. Sometimes they require the removal of exotic species like popcorn trees that are just everywhere out there. And can you go back to that diagram, that property diagram? I'm not sure that I understand exactly. Is the piece of property that he wants to affect right off, is that it, the orange?
The orange
rectangle?
and the piece on Edgewood, that piece there, 2 pieces.
Okay. Now see, that would remain in ownership of that person. DEP or nobody owns that except that individual. It's just that they can't develop it. However, they are required to manipulate it to the standards that DEP had. And they're given a tax break. When you set aside property as mitigation property, you're given a tax break on it. And that may be why the taxes have not been paid. And it would also show that some of that Holley by the Sea doesn't. But whoever his client is probably does have ownership of that property.
No, his client is developing a piece of property off 98. That's why the second slide shows who their client is, Nalini Patel.
But see, it doesn't have to be, the mitigation property doesn't have to be adjacent
Exactly. No, you're
to
right.
the property. It
You're
just
right.
has to be in the same watershed.
You're correct. But, I mean, bottom line, we need to find out more about it.
Well, I agree with
Yeah,
that.
absolutely.
I'm just trying to help get you a little bit of an explanation
Yeah.
on some of the tax issues.
I have a question for you. Is it possible, let's say that I wanted to develop a piece of property up on US 90, and on that property was a couple of acres of wetlands. And if I owned a couple of acres of wetlands someplace else, can I trade those?
It depends. It would have to be in the same watershed.
We have to be in the same watershed.
Yeah. But, I mean, I've seen developed property in South Walton County, and the mitigation property was way up in Freeport. So they don't have to be really close together, but they were all in the Choctaw Bay watershed.
So I can't exchange 2 properties that are wetlands on something I'm trying to develop.
Well,
I could say, well, here, you can have these 2 properties that I own, but I want to build on these.
well, it depends. For one thing, it's usually 10-to-1. In other words, if you had an acre you wanted to develop a wetland, you may have to set aside 10 acres.
Well, I explained about the water.
That's what the water board had to do.
Yeah.
I don't know about the water board, but
Yeah,
that's what.
that's what we first heard.
I just wanted to.
Thank you.
Well, from being around here for about 20 years, let me just try to help the people that don't understand what we're talking about. When Holley by the Sea was developed, the developer had to set aside all this green belt in order to build this association. So that property's already, so to speak, been mitigated once, okay? Then when we went from developer control, I'm gonna try to go through this fast because the greenbelt to me is expensive and boring. So anyway, when the developer, for whatever the reason was, he used to have videos out, I used to have a couple of them, says the reason you won't live in Holley by the Sea is because of all this greenbelt area never ever to be built on. Never ever to be built on. So consequently, when we went from developer control over to homeowners control, out of the clear blue, nothing, he sold all of this greenbelt area to a guy named Billy Williams. And it goes back and forth in their name to back and forth. But we had to hire this attorney that Alex Sim keeps talking about, John Borderline, to represent Holley by the Sea on this issue. So they did come up with a settlement. He's got, this might be something for the future, that when boards get elected, you might want to get him in here and get all your people up to date on the greenbelt, on what's took place and what you can control and what you can't. Now, this property is worth a lot of money, because everybody that has wetlands wants to have mitigated property. But what was odd about this situation, here's a guy wanting a right-of-way for 5 years to go on this property when he owns nothing. This is all greenbelt. This is up on Edgewood by the stop sign, up on Palmetto Ridge. It's on the right side. That's one of the only areas that you have access from, it'd be the north and the south, the east and the west to go on that property. So my question was, well, this seems pretty funny. Why does he need an easement here? Because you can access that property. There are dirt roads on 3 sides of it from anyway. But it's about this lady down here that we're on 98 that's building, wants to build this property where they're building those big condos or whatever they're building. So this would save her probably by him going in there and cutting a couple of trees, but I don't know, I've never seen, I haven't had the privy to see what he's gonna do. Is he gonna drive trucks across the property? I don't know. Is he gonna drive bulldozers? I don't know.
I did ask him
Just
that.
keep going.
And he said that he would not bring any heavy equipment across our properties.
Well, in my opinion is, you folks should rescind that vote. You
Nope.
should talk to the attorney, the only thing I can advise you on, and go from there. Thank you.
Okay,
Captain
real quick,
Obvious.
very quick.
Very quick. Madam President, if I was you, I would make this guy pay the $550 instead of the membership pay for it. He wants it so bad, then let him pay for us to talk to an attorney. We shouldn't have to pay ourselves. Or more. That's what I want you to think. All right.
Well, I believe he's gonna have to pay us anyway, if we grant.
I know, but
And we
initially,
can add that.
to get it out of the way, let him pay the $550 for you to talk to an attorney. Why should we pay for it if we're not getting anything out of it? You see what I'm saying?
Okay, thank you. Okay, can I have Pete? Let's get
Pete Bushanko, 2532 Cypress Point Circle. 2034 Jamaica Drive. The builder is looking for a variance. The driveway is set at 8 feet instead of the required 10 feet. There was an error in reading the blueprints. He thought it was a 6 and it was an 8. And basically, it was 2 foot closer to the property line than he wanted. And that was picked up on final inspection, so he's asking for a variance. All the variances have been signed by the neighbors. So it's been the architectural's vote to approve, recommendation I should say, to approve it
This is in retro.
in retro.
Retro, okay. Can I have a motion, please?
Motion to approve, Whitworth Builders, 104 Auburn Road. Oh,
No.
wrong one. Jamaica Drive, sorry. 2034 Jamaica Drive to approve the variance.
I second it.
Okay. It is motioned and seconded to approve the variance in retro for 2034 Jamaica Drive, to allow the distance from the driveway from the property line to be reduced from 10 foot to 8 foot. Are there any debate? No?
What is the ACC's opinion on this?
Yeah,
Yes, approve it.
Okay.
Okay, are you ready for the question? Okay, the motion is to approve the variance in retro to the distance of the driveway from the property line from 10 foot to 8 foot on 2034 Jamaica Drive. Those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay.
Ryan on the phone, or is that a 4?
It's a 4-0, because there was a little problem with him. We're gonna get him, again, he's might be gone through a black spot or something. Yeah, we call that triangle. Okay, 4-0. You wanna go on, Pete?
Yep, 6522 Kempton Street. This is for a variance for a fence in the rear yard, just the rear panel. You can see the highlight. Basically, it was existing fences on the left and the right side. It was just a rear fence. Behind that fence was a chain link fence. The homeowner put up the fence in front of the chain link fence. That was the neighbors, not realizing that he put it smooth side in. Even though the chain link fence was there, he didn't think that he had to put the smooth side to the chain link fence. So he needed a variance for that. All the neighbors agreed, even the neighbor with the chain link fence that it affects directly had no problem with it. So it's been the committee's recommendation to approve.
Okay. I just want to ask a question. It seemed that a few meetings ago, there was one, and I think it was a veteran, they put his fence the
Yes.
wrong way around, and that was disallowed.
Correct.
So-
It's actually disallowed. It's actually been repaired. That was on the facing out where the people could see it to the street. This is facing just to the backyard. Nobody else could see it except that one.
I mean, are we being consistent here? It doesn't sound like we're being consistent. If we,
Well, this is a wooden fence. This is a wooden stockade fence.
Well, what happened to the chain link fence?
The chain link fence is still there.
So
The other one you might be talking about too, the 2 weeks ago you were talking about, is the chain link fence went up.
no, this was a veteran, and I think.
Right, well, the veteran, right,
Yeah, I think a group of people had just come and done it. And
right.
They
The
didn't.
problem with that fence was it wasn't done properly where it was unsightly. The beams going across were all up and down, they layered. It didn't go straight across, they staggered it, so it was very unsightly.
So we're really sure that we're being,
I am.
we've got a standard.
If you want to join the committee, come on over and come take a look too.
Well, it's just, I remember the other one that he had to take his down, and this seemed very.
He didn't take it down. He didn't take it down. We actually had some other volunteers, which
Somebody took it down.
No. A different builder volunteered his time and material and actually went back and fixed it.
You need to get these employees to tell people which direction their fences need to be and write it on their application.
Right. Well, this particular builder is a new builder to Holley by the Sea, so he's working out some kinks. But on the flip side, he's actually working with us, so meaning he's coming to the office, he's making mistakes, but he's trying to correct it, but he's not trying to hide anything either.
Did he get a permit when he started, or was
I
it?
believe he did, yes.
Yeah, so he had a permit, and he knew what to do, and he did the wrong thing.
Right. The problem with this particular builder is I believe he was the first time, he had someone else sort of, I don't want to say holding the license or whatever. He's living in the house, so it's his first time, but even though another builder and me, this is the first time he actually built here. But there was another builder, Mr. Moyer, who, I don't want to say covered him, but I believe built his house with him. So I think there was a little communication error. He doesn't speak very well English. There's a little language barrier.
I'm gonna kind of say, it does seem a little bit, similar to the other thing, and one got it and one doesn't.
Right, he's a builder, but I don't think he's building another house. This was his own house, and this is it.
But still, I think we have to be very, very careful in the ACC to be consistent, to give everybody the same variance or disapproval or whatever. But, we'll put this to a vote.
I absolutely agree with you. If anybody else can see it, I would agree, but no one can see it except the one person with the chain link fence, and it's behind the chain link fence, so it's not even really visible.
Do you wanna say?
Yeah, my question is, how do we, deal as a board when we have 3 neighbors that have signed off and said, I have no issues with the fence as it is, there are no problems with the fence, it is beautiful and functional, and there are no problems with the fence as it is constructed, it looks good and looks professionally installed.
To be honest with you, that's what really we look at. We look at actually the variances and what the neighbors say. That plays a big part in our judgment, really. This particular one is one of my good friends, is the neighbor of the house. So if he didn't have an issue, how can I say I care?
Yeah, I mean, it just still seems that sometimes, that we don't always go with what neighbors say, sometimes we go by a rule. I just would want us to be always consistent, you know, if we say to one, you've gotta turn your fence around, we say that all across the board.
That's why we're here.
We will put this to a vote, do I have a motion?
This one you didn't make a
We did, no, we recommended to approve it.
I don't see it on there.
Actually, I didn't get it because it was done today.
Okay, so you're recommending that?
Yes.
Do I have a motion? Yes, no? No motion? Somebody?
I'll make a
We don't appear to have a motion on this one.
Gotta vote on it.
You want me to make the motion?
I'll make a motion. I make a motion that we approve the architectural variance for 6522 Kempton Street. Motion to approve variance in retro rear panel of fence installed smooth side in.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Okay, it's moved and seconded to approve the variance in retro, the rear panel of the fence installed smooth side in 6522 Kempton Street.
Yeah, on his defense too, you gotta remember, the other fences are not his. So he's mixing and matching. So now, in his mind, he just matched what was there. Do you understand? He didn't put up the left and the right side, so it's smooth side in also, because someone else put them up.
So what you're saying is that the fence that was on each side of him.
Was already smooth side in.
I see.
Do you understand what
Are you ready for the question?
So, you could say no, and he'll flip it around, there's no way.
Okay, are you ready for the question? The question is, do we approve the variance in retro for the rear panel of the fence installed smooth side in 6522 Kempton Street? Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Abstain.
Aye.
I abstain too. So you have a 2-0 vote, so this does not pass.
No,
What are you gonna?
Why you abstaining?
Well, let me get, what?
What's the rule for that?
Why don't you just vote?
well, he wasn't here for the discussion.
He doesn't know any of the background though.
Let's table this and bring it up at the next meeting.
That's fine.
Okay, let's do that.
I have one more question for you. We have a builder that's starting to inquire about purchasing property over on Sunrise, and he wants to make it a model home. And he's inquiring about what are the requirements for a model home, being that it's on part of the checklist that we want to know if it's a model home. So I'm asking you guys, since I really don't have, besides maybe accessibility and signage, what are the requirements if it's not a premier lot?
I think you're gonna have to come up with something, and then we'll see if that's okay. I think we're gonna shuffle that one up
Is
to
that,
you.
that's
Yeah.
what we do, come up with something?
Well, here's the thing, I mean, he's asking me before he even buys it.
Well, what were the requirements for the other ones?
As far as I know, and I just questioned Beth, we really don't have any except for signage and whether or not it was accessibility and traffic issues. We don't want it too far into the community where it's gonna cause traffic issues. After talking to some builders that actually have the model homes, said it's very rare that you have more than one couple at a time or two coming and going that it's ever a traffic issue. They wish it was more, but it's not.
Well, is he wanting an answer like now?
Well, I guess he wants to know what the investment, how much, I guess he just wants what the requirements would be. And we really don't have any set except for, we want them to tell us whether or not it's, you know, a model home.
Yeah.
I don't know of any myself, that's why I'm asking you.
I think the committee is gonna have to come up with a suggestion on this. I think really to do this at the board meeting.
Now, we come up with suggestions, am I gonna bring it to you and then you're gonna okay it, or do I tell?
I think you've got to okay it.
It's commercial property.
Yeah.
What's commercial property?
It becomes commercial.
Oh, it becomes commercial.
It becomes a commercial property.
I think you better go do a little research because there is some requirements on those properties he's talking about.
Where?
Quite a few
Where?
restrictions.
Where?
You should have fun.
Is in the covenants?
Ask the manager what she knows about.
I read the covenants pretty well. I don't know of anything in there that says if it's a model home. If you know where it is, please show me.
It's commercial.
There is not any, what there is, and I was
We'll
on
have
the
to
board
do
at the
some
time,
research
was
and
we
check
got rid of all
the
these
county
flags and all these signs. They're limited on the amount of signs they can put up. I think it's.
Right, that's all, that stuff we know. We know signage and we know whether
But as far as
traffic.
all
Pete,
the other
Pete, how
ones-
about we take this offline and you gather some information, you know, Dan's got some input, Endel's got some input, and, you know, come back with this. Because I think we really don't know enough to make any kind of decision today. Okay, we're at the committee reports. Do I have anybody from the social committee?
Denise Myers, 7249 Reed Road. Since the last meeting, I did talk about the veterans potluck that we had. And since that time in November, we also held the Artisans Alley Craft Fair. It turned out to be successful, and we had over 100 shoppers. So that was real good, and I did have a lot of requests to hold that again and again. So I had some really good feedback on that. So thanks to all those that participated in that. The upcoming event is marked for December the 13th. That's a Saturday. It's going to be the Santa's breakfast and photos. So it will begin at 9 a.m. Saturday morning, December the 13th. And all that can, please come on time because we do have Santa arriving at 9:15 sharp. So we want to make sure everyone's there to see Santa and his elf. Will be coming in on a fire truck. So it'll be a big entrance, so make sure you're on time. There will be a real nice, large breakfast, lots of variety. And we will also have, the cost, by the way, for the breakfast will be $5 for adults. That means 12 years of age and up. And that's a real low price, and then a super, super low price is $2 per person for 11 years and younger. Okay? And then also, we are going to have it arranged to where we can have the family get their photos taken with Santa and Santa's elf in front of the tree. We're gonna have that set up in here.
Denise, a minute. Please, let's not talk while somebody is giving a report.
Thank you.
Sorry.
Yes, and the location will be, by the way, here in this building versus the beach house, which we originally planned, so I want to make sure everyone's aware of that. Santa's pictures will be here, so you can get your family photos. And we also will have a special performance with the young children that do ballet. That will happen during the event as well. And I also want to extend a thank you to Rebecca for donating a Christmas tree that we will also have up here, and to Alex for donating ornaments for our tree. That will also be located in the Eaton area. Okay? Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have anybody from the ADA Task Force Committee, whatever? No? No? Last call. Okay, the Grounds Oversight Task Force Committee. Do you have anybody from that? Do you have anybody from the Grounds Oversight Task Force? No? Long Range Planning Task Force Committee?
Beth Walter, 1948 Resort Street. We've had a couple meetings so far, and I submitted a draft for a, if you want to call it a charter, but basically rules of responsibility, and you're voting on that later on in the meeting. We're having another meeting tomorrow morning at 9:30 if anybody wants to join us. So far, we're still trying to get a little organization going, and tomorrow we're supposed to come up with 3 things that we're going to try to work on right away to show some action. That's all I have.
Thank you. And I think we have the erosion committee already.
Yes.
So we're gonna get hold of Ryan. Okay, we're on old business. We're about to discuss rescinding the vote on the allowance for easement that we approved last meeting. Okay, do I have a motion?
I make a motion that we rescind the vote on allowance for easement requested by Keith Johnson.
I second that.
Discussion?
Yeah, it's moved and seconded to rescind the vote on the allowance for easement requested by Keith Johnson, Wetland Science, at the November meeting. Is there debate? No.
Yeah, couple of questions. I think it would be a good idea to talk with Border Lawn, although I think maybe we need to amend the agenda to put that in there. And I also I think it was Dan's suggestion that we find out whether or not Wetland Science wants to pay for Border Lawn.
Say that again.
Oh, okay, Rebecca is recommending that, in addition to rescinding the vote, she's agreeable to, getting Borderland on board and making Wetland Science pay for it, which was Dan's suggestion.
Asking them
Asking
if they
them,
would
okay.
be willing to pay for it. And I think that we need to know a little bit more about mitigation. What Endel said was also true, and a number of years ago, Billy Williams actually came
Exactly.
to board meetings and talked about all of the green belts. And I think it would be very valuable to us to know, and even if it costs us more than $500, we need to determine what it is we want to know, not just about that property.
Mr. Borland would be very willing to come to the meeting. I had thought about having him at this meeting to speak, but he's in Virginia. We can rescind the vote and we can go ahead and get him to come and speak at the next meeting. Yeah?
Okay, so my question is, do we have to amend the agenda because we're adding something to it?
No, we don't need to. But let's vote on this piece, and we can do another one. Okay, so we're in the middle of a motion. We have a motion on the table. Is there any more debate? Are you ready for the question? Okay.